We are coming to you live from Serena International Conference Center in Kampala. In this broadcast, we're going to have a conversation on local revenue mobilization. Now, the budget for 2023-2024 stands at a whopping 52 trillion Uganda shillings, but 29 trillion will be sourced locally. Now, you at home and maybe in your business, you could be feeling a financial squeeze. Where is this money going to come from? That is the question tonight which I'll be asking. Uganda's tax ratio GDP stands at 13%. Will URA broaden or deepen the tax mobilization agenda? Later in this broadcast, we shall also have an interaction with you through different platforms, on Twitter, on Facebook, and phone calls. My name is Patrick Amara, and let's get started. Thank you so much for joining us, Uganda. We are coming to you live from Serena International Conference Center here in Kampala, and this is a special edition of On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guests, most of them are from Uganda Revenue Authority. Let me introduce them. I have Ms. Patience Tumusime Rubagumya, who is the Commissioner, Legal Services and Border Affairs. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kamara, for having us here.
We have Commissioner Customs, Abel Kagumire. Thank you so much for joining us, Abel.
Thank you for having us, Patrick, and good evening, viewers.
We also have tonight Beatrice Muzale, Manager IFRIS. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you.
And from Kasita, we have the chairperson, Thaddeus Musoke Nagenda. Thank you so much for joining us, Thaddeus.
Thank you, Patrick. Good evening, viewers.
Let me begin with you, Mr. Rubagumya. For those of us who are paying taxes and those who are watching tonight, they feel they're being taxed almost out of business. You know, you seem always to be deepening instead of broadening the tax revenue agenda. Why is that so?
Good evening, viewers, once again. So, Mr. Kamara, thank you so much for that question. And I believe it is a question that we in Uganda Revenue Authority have actually been asked many times. Are we actually widening the tax base, or are we simply squeezing the few people that we have on our tax register? So we currently have a tax register that has 3.3 million taxpayers, and that has actually grown over the last 2 years. So what we are doing really is making sure that everybody who is supposed to pay taxes really is on that register. So what is the first thing that we are doing? And some of the initiatives that we have brought on board on how to widen that tax base so that we do not have the same people being taxed over and over again, because we believe it is important that every person who is supposed to pay taxes indeed is on our register, and that is why one of the biggest initiatives that we have taken is to make sure that we go out and we look for people who are not on the register. So arising from that, what have we done, Mr. Kamara? One of the best things that we have done really is to widen and see how we can have synergies within the government departments. What do I mean by that? We have entered into a number of partnerships, a number of agreements where we are able now to look at information that is held by the different government agencies. And through that, we've been able to widen the tax base. We've been able to bring on board new people that were not on the register, new people that were really outside our bracket. So as a result of that synergy and making sure that we have these partnerships, we've actually been able to bring on board a number of people. So we believe that really we as the URA, we should not simply go out and tax the same people over and over again. It is important for us to widen the tax base, to widen the people who are on the register so that every person who is supposed to pay indeed is able to pay a fair share of the taxes. And Mr. Kamara, here I am saying a fair share of the taxes, because we've also had complaints where people are saying we are squeezing them and making them pay taxes over and above what is supposed to be paid. But that is not what we believe in.
I don't know what you have said is actually true widening, because this is what I think. Because it appears most of the businesses in Uganda are informal. There are many people out of your tax bracket because you cannot reach them. So you continue to go for those who are formal. Commissioner Abel, why can't you give incentives so that people who are outside, they formalize their business, maybe try to make them grow. Give them a certain time. Then when they grow, you can come and tax them. So they too can come in the tax base.
I think that's what, thank you, Patrick, and that's what we are deliberate on. And as a government, if you look at what we are doing, we are trying to see that almost everyone contributes a share of what they are supposed to pay. And these incentives that we give Ugandans are open to everyone.
Like
even
what?
you, Patrick.
Like what?
If you starting up a factory and you are doing into manufacturing, you have a 10 tax year holiday.
But do you realize you are still talking about the big-time taxpayers? That's good for you.
Yes.
I'm talking about bringing in on board everyday Ugandan who seem to be involved in informal business.
I don't know whether you're aware that now the way the government policy is, we are trying to organize all the farmers, all the groups into the value chain, If you look at government policies that they come up with, they are trying to encourage a lot of import substitution. I hope you're aware. Most of the small-scale traders and even medium taxpayers, they used to do a lot of importation. But now they are getting organized into circles and getting organized into manufacturing and coming up with machines, plant and machinery, which are exempted, by the way. So they start up something that would help them to produce, because that's where government is focusing most. And in that process, we will find the small becoming medium, the medium becoming large. And when you look at the incentives, they're also classified. There are those who are foreign, there are those who are local. The rates are different. So you will find that government is deliberate on growing the small scale, giving them incentives at a local level, access to microfinance institutions, which give them money and capitalization so that they're able to access loans and start businesses. And I don't want to think they have been left out. If you look at this parish development model, it's trying to get all Ugandans into a cash economy. And when you see the president also emphasizing issues of the 4-acre model and talking about it, he's trying to see, does this small person have something to sell? Or they are producing.
Yeah, but do you realize that
So
the
that's how
president
you
can talk
attract
about the
them to
4-acre
come in.
model, he can go and even demonstrate the bottle irrigation kind of system, but is it actually working and making money?
Oh, why not? That's why he's always, I'm seeing emphasis, not only the president, even all government, emphasizing to stop land fragmentation, because land is a critical resource in mobilization of money. So they need it as a way of producing on it. And so if you don't have land, it's difficult to do the 4-acre model. And that's why they're emphasizing stop land fragmentation so that you allow land to be utilized for production. And I think government is in the right direction to encourage all Ugandans to get involved into the money economy.
Okay,
and get
getting involved into the
production.
money economy. I'm coming to you, Beatrice, because earlier Mr. Bagumia here said we're about 3 million people who are in the tax bracket, right? How many Ugandans are in the workforce? Do you have an idea? For us to target the 3 million, I suppose we have many more millions who are working, but you are not targeting them. What's the plan?
Thank you, Patrick, for that. It's a valid question, actually. One of the initiatives that URA is undertaking, as has been said by the Commissioner Customs, is through collaboration. Like for the employment space, we are in collaboration with NSSF, because with that information, you can have an idea of the employment workforce that is out there. So we are embracing that collaboration, collaborating the databases, and upping our tax base with those that are not yet in the net for employment income.
But you see, Uganda's tax ratio GDP stands at only 13%, right?
Yes.
And it's actually stagnated at 13%. Why? Why is it stunted?
It's a combination of factors, but as an administration, we are very deliberate into bringing people into the net, but there are sectors that have taken just a slow pace, like agriculture and forestry and those sectors, and we are really focusing on them through the associations through the
Do
associations.
you realize, Beatrice, you have
Yes.
just talked about a sector that employs more than 70% of Ugandans.
True.
And that is what is taking a slow pace.
Yes.
So it's Uganda taking a slow pace.
Yes, and on the side of the clientele, okay, tax generally is something that the businesses do not embrace like any other obligation. For example, if I have a utility bill to pay, because the water, for example, will be switched off, I am more encouraged to actually pay in time because I use it on a daily. But generally, tax for economies it's a non-quid pro quo. So the paying community expects a direct and instant benefit out of paying the tax. And that is the kind of culture that we are dealing in, and we are sensitizing and encouraging to make sure that where the most people in the economy are employed, that's where the tax should be coming from.
Yes,
like
because
agriculture.
most people in Uganda, Beatrice, are employed in agriculture.
Yes.
And you have just said in your own words, in agriculture, they are taking a slow pace.
Yes.
And if many of our people are taking a slow pace, that's Uganda is actually moving at a slow pace.
True.
Should I understand it that way?
Like I said, as an administration, we are very deliberate because we have really identified the sectors that are not contributing to the expected level of the tax to GDP, and agriculture is one of them. So we've gone down there, even through this initiative that the Commission has mentioned, is to try to reach the lowest person on the grassroots, educate them, show them the benefits as a whole, as an economy, and also the level of dependence that we bring to our economy by everyone contributing. So we are very deliberate as URA, and we are actually out on the ground. In that, we have also increased our physical presence for our offices in the different parts of the country to make sure that we touch base with the taxpayers that are on ground in the different parts of the country, up country, to make sure that they appreciate, because what you pay out of knowledge and appreciation, it is more lasting and impactful than when you just like force through the community, the business community to make the payments.
Okay,
so we are at it.
Let me go to Tadeus. Tadeus, you are the chairman of CASITA. CASITA is Kampala City Traders Association, but you want to call it CASITA. You know, I've just had a conversation about an hour ago with somebody who runs a shop on Kampala Road. And their problem is that they have to pay property rate. They have to pay ground rate. They have to pay annual fee and trading license and all this. If somebody is employing 5 or 6 people, they have to pay payee, and then of course plus utility bills of water and all this kind of stuff. Your own people are crying. When you meet these commissioners, what would you want to tell them?
Thank you very much. As CASITA, we thought that the businesses are facing several challenges. Before CASITA, we used always to attack URA. But we decided to engage them to make sure that how do we avail the information to our members. Access to information wasn't easy before. But currently, we have had several engagements with the tax body. And then, like when you're saying NSSF, paying for NSSF, paying for payee, and now we have an engagement with NSSF. They're not going to implement it rapidly. We told them we are supposed to sensitize our members to know exactly the right procedures. How can I implement my NSSF contribution as an employee? So since it's a new policy, we told them, please, let us have several sensitization drives to the business community so that they can comply. Furthermore, when you talk about now paying for license, for sure, to work in the city, you have to pay for trading license. That's obvious. You have to pay for trading license. We have had several engagement with KCCA, try to be more flexible. So what we did as CASITA is to engage several government entities to see how do you interest a trader to comply. Because there are several restrictions, there are several regulations which you have to follow when you're in business. And CASITA, we are championing legal trade because you cannot sustain a business which is illegal. For what we need is just how do we make the policies favorable for a businessman to survive. Now, when you talk about property rent, we discovered that KCC, how it was implementing it was totally fair and unacceptable. Because when they're demanding a landlord and you come and you look at the entire arcade, for me, when I paid for my trading license, already I'm operating legally. So it's just a matter of engaging the landlord.
How does a tenant be made to pay for the property rent?
No, it's not. It's not. They cannot force a tenant to pay for property rent. But the way they were implementing it, that they close the whole arcade, so we the traders suffer. So at times even we had to engage security, where they came and they locked the arcade with even the tenants inside. So we told them this is not human at all.
But now you're talking about KCCA, right?
So we talked about property rent.
Yes.
So that's why I
and
came with that.
who is locking you are shopping
It was KCCA because they are demanding for property rent. So I think it's just a matter of making sure how do we implement and then how do we interest the traders to understand these tax obligations. Secondly, when we talk about taxes, you're supposed to pay taxes on the profit. So the only challenge is that we have several challenges that at times our perception towards taxes, you know, we have issues in our businesses. You think that when you have good bookkeeping, these URA people will overtax me. So you try to do some manyanga, not to make the book so clear. So in that process, these guys we work, we employ, they cheat us a lot.
All right, hold on there. I think there's a lot of manyanga. I'm going to understand it more. But, you know, KCCA is coming also to look for revenue from business people in Kampala. URA is also coming to collect revenue from the same people in Kampala. I'm wondering, why can't just have URA do the same thing? Why do we have to have KCCA collecting and URA collecting all of you in the same area? Mr. Bagomia.
Thank you so much, Patrick. It is well because one is a local government, then you have a central government. However, we have said that now we need to find a way, a simplified way of enabling this person who is paying the different taxes, really. You're looking at property tax, you're looking at a rental tax, more or less the same properties, but these are very different tax heads. So what we have decided is that can we make it very simple for somebody to understand, first of all, what are the differences with all these tax rates and the levies that our government is actually putting out. And when that is done, then in the administration now, what mechanisms do you have to make it simpler for somebody to be able to comply with the different obligations? So one of the things that we have done under this arrangement that we are calling TREP is to make sure that we have the local government, the Uganda Revenue Authority, we have KCC on board, we have Uganda Registration Services Bureau, all moving together and sitting under one roof. So that when you go out now to get your license, the URA will be there, and you should be able to see whether you're registered for taxes, and if you're not, what must be done to enable you to comply. So those are some of the things that we have done administratively to make sure that we ease the burden on the person really who is paying, because indeed it is a burden, Mr. Kamara. If you're going to have different requirements, you're going to have information being asked over and over again, and yet you have one central channel where all this money is going to, then what can you do, what can be done? The other issue is also looking at what some of the discussions really is from a policy angle, really. But these are still discussions, really, which are yet to be concretized. For instance, if I take the issue of our property tax, some of the feedback that we have got is that why don't you have just one tax head that would cover the property tax, the rental tax, and then you have that being collected by one person. But of course, that is a policy measure, but there are discussions around that, but it is really all aimed at easing and making sure that our taxpayers indeed are not very inconvenienced. So those are some of the things that we are
so
doing.
you agree the current policy is cumbersome?
Yes, it is to some extent, really it is, because really you're looking at the same person, it is still the same property, and then you have all these differences that they have to make a different regime. The laws provide for differences. So indeed, to some extent, so it is an area indeed that from a policy angle, certainly something could be done.
So Tadeus, you can understand that URA understands your pain, that this is a bit problematic. That's what the head of legal is saying.
Maybe yes.
There's a policy problem, and perhaps there's going to be a policy review. That's what you would be. That's what she's vouching for, not right? A policy review.
Yes, to some, yeah, for now, really, if of course, but you need to have all these discussions. But ultimately, it is feedback that we have got, and one of these sessions that we have is that when we get feedback on some of the things that we are doing, these are some of the discussions that we then escalate to other policymakers and say there's this issue that we feel our taxpayers are greatly burdened with. So what must be done? What do we need? And then we share discussions on what needs to be done to improve that situation.
Abel, it appears when I hear what business people are saying, including the chairman Kasita, there is less sensitization going on. There's less interaction between the taxpayer and the tax collector. Why is that so?
Thank you, Patrick. And that's why sometimes we have these forums to bridge that gap. And tax education is very key to our taxpayer, because we very well know there are many tax heads, the tax policies change, the tax regime is different. So we get time to make sure that we get to our taxpayers in different segments and sectors, and so that we reach out to them. There are those who are manufacturers. You get them in one corner and talk to them and explain to them what are your obligations, what are the requirements you need to start a factory, and they get to know. There are those who are into import and export. You get them in one corner, talk to them and speak to them and give them the rates for importation, what is exempted when you import, what is the requirement for importation, what are the regulatory requirements for you to import, and you make sure they understand different sectors. And that has been our strategy, so that we reach out to them. Of recent, you've heard about Tujenge bus.
Yes.
Now we go to all the corners of Uganda, unreachable areas, hard to reach areas with this bus. Purpose, it is a mobile bus for tax education. And we go with all the literature that is required, explain all the issues they request, put it in the local language they would understand, make it so easy for even someone who has just started a grocery to appreciate at what stage do you pay tax. Do you pay now or you pay later? How do you get a tin? How do we give you a tin? How do you join because when you get a tin, it means you are now becoming a taxpayer. So we've tried to do that. Of course, we are 44 million Ugandans. Others are being born today. But we do our best through our public and corporate affairs division to make sure we reach out to each and everyone. And if we can't do it ourselves, we partner.
Okay, Beatrice, it appears that some people, perhaps they find challenges in keeping books of accounts, bookkeeping and stuff like that. Though Tadeo said they can do manyanga, maybe cut corners. That's what I understood. Try to cut corners. So what would you tell people like this, that the benefit of record keeping, so that, because some people will, try deliberately not to have those books.
Thank you, Patrick.
Because they want to avoid you.
Yeah, that's actually true to some extent. Apparently, as what I can tell the taxpayers, and also what in our tax administration, what we have embraced, right from, we have an incubation method of growing businesses from grassroots in our tax administration to until they can pay a slightly bigger fare of the tax. So when you look at our tax regime, the presumptive regime, the small business taxpayer rates, where we look at the turnovers from less than 10 million, then from 10 million to 150. In there, when you look at the recent policy, the tax regime that we have under presumptive, we have a categorization of businesses that maintain records and businesses that do not maintain records. If you maintain records and you're under the presumptive taxpayer category, we charge the taxes charged onto you at an ad valorem rate, like at a percentage,
okay, that is
of
lower.
The turnover, which is a bit more realistic because you tax me as per my capacity. But also for those people, the businesses that don't maintain the records, we give a specific rate. Because as an administration, revenue administration, we need to have a standard. So there is already an incentive in there that when you maintain records, you are taxed at the percentage of your turnover, and when you don't, we give you a specific rate, just to be fair. But also, people who maintain records under the presumptive category, they also enjoy their credit, because they have the capacity to maintain the records, the withholding tax that they paid during the the transaction period. So when they're filing their income, when they're submitting, we can even allow them to reduce the credit. So those are all benefits of maintaining records. But also to move to the bigger categories of businesses. Under the Domestic Resource Mobilization Program, there was an introduction of IFRIS, which is one of the smart solutions to support in maintaining records that can be accessed digitally in a secure and easy way. So when the IFRIS helps you to transact, and the transaction is captured in real time on both the business front and also the government front. And in there, in case of any further tax credits and claims, and also in assessing your taxes and also looking at how you're moving, you're progressing over the years, IFRIS is one of the solutions that has been brought on board.
You are assuming that the business people
Yes.
are computer literate, are going to be able to use IFRIS and,
Yes.
and the digital solution with a lot of ease?
Okay, we have a variation of solutions under the electronic physical receipting and invoicing solution. We are implementing IFRIS based on a turnover. As I earlier said, taxpayers that fall within the small taxpayer business category, they do not have a VAT threshold. And that is why URA chose to implement IFRIS in a phased manner. So we started with a bit of the taxpayers that have a higher turnover, because if you really have a turnover of 150 million in a year and above, you can afford to buy a small computer in your unit, and you are looking at the portfolio of business that you're handling. So in that portfolio, also some of the businesses are even in different branches across the country. So we are seeing that such businesses also have a bit of a system or something that is digital on how to monitor their businesses.
Okay, we have a businessman in the house, and
Yes.
he represents other business people. How are they finding using some of these technologies?
We had several petitions from the business community about IFRIS. And for sure, most of our members were not comfortable with it. First of all, I think even the perception and even the method used to sell the idea of IFRIS to the traders. You know, my brothers and sisters here, when they approach the business community, the language they use, they want to emphasize tax compliance. But for me, when I analyze the IFRIS system, it's a management system. So when you improve your management system in the company, indirectly, you are a benefit from the profits. So the advantage of IFRIS, it safeguards my stock in my shop. Clearly it shows how much I bought, how much I've sold. So even if I'm not at the shop, I can easily monitor about my sales. But the problem is, what first is being reflected to the business community? The moment you tell our members, you know, with IFRIS, URA will be monitoring all the sales from the headquarters, batumaze. So, you know, they get scared. So I think URA need to reorganize and strategize. How best can they interest the traders to embrace IFRIS?
Unfortunately, I think you cannot come at a meeting point, because even from the biblical times, the taxpayer was not very welcome. But you can imagine, Abel and Mr. Bagumia, that you have something that is sensible, something that could be good. Yes, in your offices, you're making a lot of sense. But do you realize somehow you could be making sense to yourselves and not to the entire business community?
Mr. Kamara, you're so right. I think sometimes we do talk to ourselves, because now, like IFRIS, it is a solution that is supposed to help you as a taxpayer. It will help you keep your records and still get that information. But it is the way, the perception, you know, some of these processes when they get out and initiatives. Like IFRIS, for instance, we had a lot of resistance really from the taxpayers. One, they did not see any benefits from their side. So it all came out as if this was simply a URA system really that is simply going to nose into our business, but they did not look at what benefits will come from them. So what we've done around some of those areas is that, and it takes me back to the question of sensitization, that yes, we should not make a lot of presumptions. What we're saying is that IFRIS, then, what effort have we made to go out and explain to the taxpayers, to the least person who is in their small kaduka near their home, if they want to get into that, where is the advantage for them if it is a big supermarket now, why should they roll onto IFRIS? We first tried enforcement measures really, but those ones, Mr. Kamara, they did not take us very far, because then we had, it was simply antagonizing us against the taxpayers because they did not understand why that had to be done. So we have had to take a back seat now and say, how do we come up with a different strategy now? How do we get the buy-in of our taxpayers to be able to comply with some of these initiatives? And it all goes back now to the question of our tax education, which we agree as the URA indeed that the way we've been handling tax education has not been very effective. And that is why you've seen us, we've changed the bid. So you're going to see a lot more of us in different places. We are going to be on the radio, the talk shows, but all geared towards making sure that we explain ourselves now. When these initiatives are being brought now, they must understand, we must have the buy-in of the traders that we are dealing with. Chairman Kasita will also be able to attest that there are a number of engagements that we have had on the number of initiatives. Then we listen to them, we will get some of the ideas. Of course, many times, Mr. Kamara, is that sometimes we will not agree, but at least we say, this is where we need to start from. And then we work through, we make sure that we handhold them, and through these discussions, we've been able to make some progress.
Abel, do you have a sense that perhaps people are reluctant to pay taxes because when they look around themselves, they don't actually see what the taxes are doing for them? I know that's outside your scope, but if somebody is driving through a potholed road, if somebody finds the roads are flooded, if somebody finds themselves in that kind of situation, and these people really going to be so reluctant to pay taxes because they don't see the dividends?
Oh, Patrick, and well, I do collection of taxes, and I know this financial year I'm supposed to look for 25 points with my team at
Actually,
URA.
I put at 29.
That is next financial year.
Next financial year.
At least for this financial year,
Yes.
I'm struggling, and to make sure I get 25. And this 25 trillion is supposed to support Ugandans, and we make sure that we do everything. The taxes work for them. And I want to assure you, a lot has been done. At least I collect, but at least I move on the road.
Speak not like Abel the commissioner.
No,
Speak
no,
like
no.
Abel a Ugandan.
Yes, that's why I want to speak like a Ugandan. At
Really?
least the road network has been done well.
You drive in Kampala?
Yes, no, Kampala I drive, but they work on that. But at least the road network, I'm in charge of customs. I do borders. I drive on tarmac from here up to Oraba.
Do you understand?
I drive on
Do you
tarmac from here.
understand that almost 70% of Uganda's GDP is within Kampala metropolitan area?
I know.
Isn't it better and fair that where you get the money, put it back?
Yes, but
Why don't you? Why
first
don't they
of
do
all,
that?
first
Are you
of all,
happy?
I'm
I know
speaking
it's
like a
outside your
Ugandan.
docket.
No,
but-
I'm a Ugandan.
You're
At
okay.
least when I go to hospital, I should find medicine, and I find it there. If my child is going for school and is not in a private school, they go to school. There is something government is trying to do to make sure taxes work for us. My only request is to Ugandans like me, let's pay tax. Because if you're saying, you started in your intro, that our budget is 52 trillion for next financial year, and we are going to collect only 29 trillion. So where do you think the balance will come from? Because the government needs 52 for it to give services to all of us as Ugandans. But we are collecting 29 trillion. What if we were able, each and every 44, about 30 million Ugandans were into the tax-paying bracket, 18 years and above, I would say, if everyone contributed, instead of 3.3 million, we're on the register, and we are all contributing, don't you think we can get this 52 trillion? And we get the services we need?
Let us want to get the numbers. Now,
Yes.
they have asked you in this financial year to
Yes.
collect 25. Where do you stand? From 25 trillion. Where
We
do
are
you
moving well. I can see we
Because
already around...
you just said you are struggling to make 25.
No. We are moving steadily well.
I'm quoting
We are
your
around
words.
83%, and 83%, you can see, we are left with about 17%. We are left with about 42 days. We will get this money, don't worry.
So you have struggled to get 25 trillion. You are now at 82%, and you're remaining with 40 days. I wonder if you can make 25. But now,
Are you doubting, Thomas?
I'm not
We'll
doubting
get it.
Thomas because it's real. You can see it. Beatrice, if you are struggling to make 25 trillion, to collect 25 trillion, now the government has put the next one at 29. You're cooked.
Maybe Mr. Camara, before Beatrice comes in, yes, with our 25, that is the amount for this financial year.
Yes.
25. But as at April, we had collected at 19. So we have a deficit of about 557 billion, really, that was registered with the last in
You had
March.
collected 19 trillion.
Yes.
So how would you say?
So we have now the 25. So we are moving, but that was at end of April.
Yeah.
So with that deficit now of the 557, Mr. Camara, we are almost very certain that for this financial year, the 25 trillion is actually going to be good. And there are some of the things that we have actually put in place to make sure that with the 25 now, we should be able to deliver on that promise, because that is a promise we made to the Ministry of Finance. We know, and we have put in place initiatives really to be able to make sure that we get that 25 trillion.
Okay, now 25, next financial year, they will ask for 29. Really, you're punching above your weight. Will you make it?
Yes.
Beatrice?
I think given the trend and where we've come from, we have all the capacity to get to this kind of level of collection. And with the initiatives that we have apparently, most importantly, the collaboration and engagement and training of our taxpayers. I believe when you look at the trend of the tax collection over the years, there is an improvement. And this, and also the taxpayers, including our leaders of the business associations, they are attesting to the change into mindset and culture and the support that we can give them to ensure that this tax come into the net. So it's about, we need to grow the register more, and also we have initiatives, the technological ones, and also the collaboration, but also with the very taxpayers that we have to continue to enhance compliance with these solutions that we are bringing on board with the Ministry of Finance, with the digital tracking solution to capture the manufacturers. Because in an economy, if you can have a tag onto the source of the goods that come into the economy and the services at importation, and also inwardly on the manufacturing. So, because that is the real source of what is sold out, and through the value chain up to the lowest person. So I believe with the collaboration of the associations and also the central government is supporting us, together with education of the taxpayers. Mr. Camara, wait for a miracle.
A miracle indeed is what's going to take. But Tadeusz, when you hear government putting, now asking for 29 trillion,
yes,
and of course you're a taxpayer, I don't know what you make of that, whether you don't get worried, considering that even the government itself is finding it very difficult to pay public servants their salaries, to pay wages and salaries.
For sure, I get worried because most of our colleagues, the business are collapsing. Because where the government failed, the government never implemented the business recovery project so successfully. It wasn't. So you find that we have so many challenges in the business community. Even that the government allocated some recovery fund, but we have engaged Bank of Uganda, different stakeholders, but you find that even traders have failed to access that fund. Personally, even have failed to access. So what we are doing as Kasita, we are trying to see that how do we also partner with Bank of Uganda to make sure that the business community can be facilitated for recovery. For sure, I think the target could be got by URA if the business community is vibrant. But currently, when you go to Chikubo, most of the shops are being closed. And even you find that even some traders were saying, now you see, we are still in recovering from COVID effects, but now you see the taxes are still high. So you find that what we are trying to do with URA is to see that how can URA engage more with the business community to get feedback so that URA can somehow influence in some policy formation so that business can survive. But currently, we are bad off.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, hold on to your points because we are going to take a break, and on the spot, we'll be right back.
Ocho mwami musoke njose nekusanga
ate kiki
munnange anti gwamanya kunyinyonyola ebintu by'emisolo bino nembitegeera
ate kiki leero
mbadde ku dduuka nempulira nga abakyala bagamba mbu tulina okwewandiisa mu nkola ya ifris
tokikolanga
ate
kituufu nnyo
mbadde sikimanyi nakyo
eyo yenkola egenda okutuyamba okulwaninga bizinesi zaffe mu ngeri ya digito
etya
oba olina okuwandiisa bizinesi yo mu ifris osobola okumanya muwendo gw'ebintu by'olina mu bizinesi yo, enfulumya n'ennyingiza mu bizinesi yo. Awo URA esobola okukola omulimu gwayo ogw'emisolo obulungi.
Nedda mwami Musoke kye sitegeera. IFRIS eyingira etya mu bizinesi yange?
Kakati enkola ne IFRIS eyingiza bizinesi yo mu system ya URA kubanga tekyali kya buntu bulamu okugerekera omusolo ogutali mutuufu abateebereza buteebereza.
Ekyo kituufu ddala bannange, ekyo kituufu kubanga mazima obadde omusolo gubadde gwapaala bupaazi ng'ogenda n'osasula omusolo gw'otomanyiko omutwe n'amagulu kwegamba bambi nga tekiriiyo.
Olaba kakati ate n'ekirala IFRIS eyamba okukuuma ebiwandiiko bya bizinesi yo kuba biyinza okubulako, biyinza okukwata omuliro, naye kati wano IFRIS biba biri digitalized.
Bannange nekola ntya okwewandiisa?
Kyavu nnyo waludde dda. Okwewandiisa mu nkola ya IFRIS genda ku kibanja kya URA www.ura.go.ug awo olondeko e-invoicing awo no ugoberere endagiriro. URA tukulaakulanyize wamu Uganda.
Eyo jolese si yange irisiti tompa bidala irisiti ojja kumpa irisiti tompa bidala irisiti ojja kumpa
tompa bidala mpa irisiti yange kyekyo kakasa nti ofuna irisiti yo kubanga etiketi kw'onoowangulira ebirabo ssemalabo omuli zipikipiki laptops zifridge ne safari y'abagala n'ababiri okulambulako mu Uganda ku bwereere. Irisiti yo gikuba ekifaananyi okiteeka ku URA website oba ku mobile app ofuuka obukuba nnamukisa gy'okoma okuteekayo irisiti ennyingi n'emikisa gye gy'okuwangula gye gikoma okweyongera. Ebisingawo bisange ku mikutu gyaffe egy'oku mutimbagano.
Uganda Revenue Authority, developing Uganda together.
Walala banayivudde banzimye ezempedde. Jangu eno naawe olowooza ababbi b'oku street be banzibye. Saabo kankubuulire natikka ebintu byange okuva China ne baŋŋamba neetaaga tiini namba nze nga sigirina neetuma omuntu omulala abindeetere. Kati ngenze mu URA baŋŋambye ebintu byange tebiri mu manya gange era si byange mbu sayina tiini namba. Nze kati nebya tiini namba sibitegeera. Nfudde obusete neewola mwewole ye tiini namba byebiki bannange sente zange.
Tax identification number oba giyite namba omusuubuzi zewandiisa mu URA asasulira emisolo.
Kati ebyo nze njifuna ntya bambikola ntya?
Ebintu babigonza olina ndagamuntu
njirina
ogenda bugenzi ku website ya URA
www.ura.go.ug.
Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Kamara and my guests tonight are Patience Tumusime Rubagumya, Commissioner Legal Services and Border Affairs, Abel Kagumire, Commissioner Customs, Beatrice Muzale, Manager IFRIS, and we have Tadeus Musoke Nagenda, Chairperson Kasita. I think now I've realized you are in different sections. For example, you are in customs, so maybe I should be asking you things of customs more, to be fair with you. So could you tell us, there's this thing I needed to understand. It is called manufacture under bond licenses that refine, for example, those who refine gold. How do you treat for those who bring in gold from Uganda and then it is processed within manufacture under bond? You understand what I mean? And then the truly local Ugandan gold. How do you treat it in terms of taxation?
Thank you, Patrick. I think what you need to know is that gold is gold.
Yes.
Whether it's from Uganda or it is sourced from outside Uganda. The facility of manufacturing under bond means that you're sourcing raw materials from different places and you bring them in a bonded warehouse which is controlled. That's why it's called a bond.
But there is gold that is in transit, has come, let's say, from Tanzania, and it's being refined, manufactured under bond, to be re-exported.
Yes.
Are you going to treat it just like gold that has been mined in Busia?
That's why I started my first question.
Okay.
Gold is gold. what is important at the time of export.
Yes.
What is the purity level from a refinery? Okay? So for me, at the time of export, I expect the gold from a refinery to be 99.5% purity. So if that is established, you're exporting. So that means there is value addition within the manufacturing and the bond
Do you
facility.
understand, Abel, that even if that gold is exported, let's say to Dubai, what you're calling 99% purity, it is going to be considered as raw material the other side? Do you know that the certification of Uganda, what we call purity, is actually not pure gold on the global market?
Maybe, but at least for
No, it's not a
for
maybe,
you to
that's the reality.
satisfy export procedures for Uganda from a refinery, your gold should be 99.5% purity level. So if it's not, go back to the refinery and get it to that level. If you get it to 100%, well and good. But at least 99.5%, you are allowed to export. There has been value addition to that gold.
Yeah, but I'm only telling you that when they reach a market in Germany or in Dubai, what has been purified and you call the added value is still considered as raw material. They still have to undergo a refinery to reach a level that they know. By the way, there are about only 17 certified, I think, gold refineries for which they will call it their gold standard. Not what you're going to do in Entebbe, what you're going to do in Bugolobi. That is going to.
So are you trying to doubt yourself or what? As Uganda, that we don't have a refinery?
You know, the complaint I had is that they have now asked for about 600 billion that you want to collect from them. I think Parliament was talking about 300-something billion from the gold refinery, and URA has a different figure. So what exactly do you want to get from them?
No, for us, we follow the law. The law says $200 per kilogram. Okay? So for me, in my statistics and the record that we are looking at, we expect 42 billion. And what has been going has been paying. But if you remember the law before, the law before amendment, it was 5%. But now, if you look at the new law, which the minister assented to, and what the president assented to, is $200 per kilo. So I don't know whether Parliament is still referring to the 5% or the $200 per kilogram. For us, we go with the latest.
So
the latest is $200 per kilogram.
So as URA, you expect to get about 42 billion.
Yeah, if you use $200 per kilo.
But we are also reading that somewhere that they expect to get 350 billion. Others are talking of 600 billion. Have you come across that? Yeah. Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kamara. Yes, indeed, it is true that 600 billion is if you use the 5% rate, which was in the law that was repealed by the Minerals and the Mining Act. So that is where there are differences with the numbers. But recall that law, when it came into place 1st July 2021, it was not implemented because then we were asked to stay implementation because there was a discussion on that bill. So when the act was passed into law, that amendment, which had put in place the 5%, was repealed, and it gave the Minister of Energy powers to issue or to issue an instrument where she would specify the new rate that would be applicable. And that is what she did, and SI was indeed gazetted, and it provides for the 200. So that is where the differences really in the numbers is coming from. But as the URA, we are committed to collecting the tax really that is that was given to us by the mandate of the SI, and that is what we are going to follow to make sure that we do collect the taxes. But of course, we've been taken to court, and we are not able to collect it now because there is an interim order stopping, but yes.
Okay, now if that's a court issue, maybe we have to be very cautious on that. But I need to know whether you are able to tell the percentage, how much, for example, gold is purely Ugandan, from Mubende, from Karamoja, and from Busia, and what is coming from the region? Or do you mind to find out that?
Why not? Because what we do...
So what are the percent? What are the percent?
Of course, I can't tell you off head, but in terms of gold, what we have in our records is gold which comes through to the refinery.
Yes.
And mainly the statistics show some neighboring countries, but it comes on a record and a declaration, and it goes in a refinery for refining. but also gold comes from Uganda.
That's true. But
We have gold in Mubende, we have gold in Buhweju, we have gold in Busia.
I understand that. I was asking
And-
Abel
and-
about
but the
whether,
figures,
whether
I
URA
don't have them
understands
offhand, yes.
the percentage of what is purely Ugandan and what is just through as conduit to go through Uganda.
Actually, we have gold from Uganda.
Yes, what I'm talking about the
If
percentages.
you look at the percentages, I don't want to give you the rough estimate, but the rough estimate has about imported, what we get that goes into the refineries around 30%, but around 70% is from Uganda.
I think that's not true.
Then you have your statistics.
Because most gold is coming from out.
Then you'll give us your statistics.
Of course,
At least for me,
you don't want
I'm
to show
giving
that.
you what I have in my
database. You may not want to
database.
show that because some of it could be coming from out, but from wrong places that you don't want to talk about. It could be, but let me leave that for now. I'm going to come back to it. I want Beatrice, I've heard of issues of incentives, you know, given some business people. What are these incentives supposed to do? Tax incentives.
To the business community,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
And how does somebody qualify to get a tax incentive?
Qualify. We give incentives based on how we administer the taxes. For instance, we have the tax type exemptions. Under the income tax, we have the withholding exemptions. Under withholding, if you're transacting and you've met the compliance bar, you're given that exemption such that as you sell, the other party does not withhold that percentage from you in the process of in the business transaction period. And how to access this is we look at your compliance. And the measure for compliance at domestic taxes majorly is we look at the registration, your declarations, how you actually submitting the returns, and the correctness and the completeness of your declarations. So we look through that and we can gauge who requires this. If you present yourself to be more compliant or better, like according to the standard, then you can have that exemption, the exemptions. We also, as an administration, we are running a self-assessment regime. And under this regime, the taxpayers, we have entrusted back to the taxpayers to determine their own fare of tax. And it is only those that probably fail to declare and the ones that probably conceal. That's where we also have the tax inspection, and then also that mechanism of inspecting and reviewing the completeness. So we are running a self-assessment regime to give peace to the taxpayer to first assess themselves over what they have to pay. Then the exemptions are also through in that process. Then recently for the EFDs, there was an outcry from the business community, that especially the small business taxpayers.
Oh, EFD is what?
Electronic fiscal device. Okay. One of the, under the IFRIS, we have platforms, invoicing methods that the different taxpayers have been provided for to use to invoice, to transact with URA under the IFRIS. So in there we have a category of businesses that have a low turnover and then that are doing route sales in areas where maybe internet is a challenge. So the EFD is a gadget that has been provided to support the taxpayer to sell on the route while fiscalizing. So URA, as part of the support, has provided, like in this financial, we had 400 to give out, as facilitated by our regulator. We have issued the 400 across the Chikubo-like tax hubs across the country, the EFDs. And also we have platforms that have been generated that are a low cost and free. And they support the offline mode. Offline mode is where you can actually transact and you can fiscalize, you can get an e-invoice, but when you're not connected to URA.
Okay, this everything is actually a docket, right?
Yes.
And I understand the supermarkets have failed to remit almost 40 billion through IFRIS. And I think it's not giving them enough leg room. So how do you intend to go about that?
The supermarkets, I don't want to affirm that percentage, because that figure.
But you know they are struggling.
Yes, there is a struggle, and specifically for the supermarkets, why they were at the front line of the compliance under the IFRIS. Most of the supermarkets, because IFRIS began in 2020, And most of the supermarkets have been running their own ERP billing systems before even IFRIS. Even before you had IFRIS, they would issue a receipt to you that is authentic from their own system. So most of the supermarkets are running an online billing system. And that is why for them, it was much easier to begin with them because we just do an API connection and then they integrate and start transacting. However, there are also there's a level of segmentation still among the supermarkets. There are the big four, then the next category, and the lower category. So I would want to say that when we started IFRIS, there were a few that were complying. But of late, I know there are glitches, some of them, they are bypasses, but we are at it and working together with them, and the level of compliance has actually moved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tadeusz, maybe you understand better the issue of tax incentives and sometimes even tax holidays. Are there people who are benefiting from such, or maybe you think they are cherry picking who to benefit?
Anyway, we had several engagement with URA, where our members have raised concern about the way URA is implementing tax incentives. They believe, because I represent several members there, they believe that they are selective, and even there are some corrupt tendencies which was raised in several engagements. And then the team of URA promised they are going to review all the ways being implemented. Like our rice importers, they suggested that let all rice importers comply with withholding tax. Or alternatively, let it be scrapped off completely. Because there are some companies which benefited from tax incentives, but others didn't benefit, so it's outcompeting. So what we are trying to do is, can URA implement these policies in a fair manner, which can support continuity of business? And where I want to thank the team of URA, that they're trying to have several engagement to see that how do they get feedback from the tax, from our members. How do we harmonize these other challenges and shortcomings? So that's why I think the team promised that we shall continue having several engagements, and where adjustments needs to be done, they have to do it, so that that relationship is so vital for the business community. But somewhere also we were puzzled that you find this one is comfortable, has tax incentives, but another one is paying. And these tax incentives, we think that even there is a way they affect on meeting the target of of URA. So we need fair policies which can support business continuity. If you are paying taxes, let us operate taxes.
Mr. Bagumia, is these tax holidays and incentives meant to woo investors and have people engage in business? Is it also one of the reasons behind?
Thank you so much, Mr. Kamara. Indeed, the main driver for these incentives really is for government. Government is trying to see what do we have in place that can attract investment in this country. Because remember, an investor, they have so many places which they could go to. And one of the things they'll look at is the tax regime of a nation. So there are specific areas that government has actually set out to promote. And this is where, if you look at the laws that we have, there are specific sectors where these incentives are really geared towards promoting. One, of course, is manufacturing. Because we'll know that with manufacturing, you have the jobs growing, then you have the market and all that now. Then you have agriculture. Agriculture is one of those areas where government has said we are going to give incentives to people who add value. Because
If you can pause there, because if you want to attract investors to come in a country, they want security, they want stability.
Yes.
If they have security, they have stability, and there's no corruption, they will invest. But if you have a country where a driver shoots a minister, if you have a country where a businessman is shot on camera, you have a country where a politician is locked up in his home, you have a country where people cannot even speak, if you have a country where, you know, the freedom of expression is on the dock, they will not come to that country. Do you understand?
Yes, I do understand.
Do you understand that stability and peace and all that kind of stuff are bigger incentives than the little thing you're going to talk about of holiday? because
Yes,
they want to be here long term.
That's true. That's true, Mr. Kamara. And indeed, the government has done so much within really the peace that we enjoy. We are here, the talk show, it is coming to midnight, but I can assure you that we are going to leave this place and go home knowing that we are very safe. So I must say the government has put in place a number of these other incentives really, or things that they have done to make sure that we have a very stable environment that can indeed attract investment into the nation. Security really is one of them, and we must credit the NRM government for what they have done to be able to create that investment, to make sure that investors come in here, they are very confident that indeed their properties or whatever they invest in is indeed very secure. So tax, yes, is a small component. It is a component in there. There are these other things, the road network, the security, the water, all these utilities, yes, but tax as well is another element that they look at. But also the other issue for these incentives, Mr. Kamara, is to be able to encourage people to invest in particular areas so that we can also have a ripple effect on the other sectors. I'll give you an example of agriculture.
Yes.
For you to be able to get that tax holiday for that 10 years, you must demonstrate that you are actually going to use the local raw materials. So what government is looking at here is the fact that indeed, if you're going to get the mangoes from here, there is somebody who is going to grow these mangoes now. So how do you tap and make sure that you're getting these mangoes from somebody who is in Soroti, as opposed to, you know, bringing in mangoes from South Africa, for instance. So those are conditions which have been included in the law in making sure that even these people, when they come to invest now, the country can also benefit from the other side. Then, of course, you'll have an increase in other taxes, really. Yes, you'll have an incentive, but then you'll have people being employed. Employment is another area that government really targets at when they're looking at these incentives. So we are making sure that one of the conditions that we continuously have to monitor as government, as Uganda Revenue Authority, is that these investors are going to employ our people.
Okay.
And then we'll be able to look at
employing
that.
Employing our people would require that people have businesses that are running smoothly. But Commissioner Abel, do you get a sense that the cost of doing business in Uganda, maybe the cost of money also, is high? For example, the interest rates seem to be high, but of course that's still out of your docket. Because it's determined by the CBR and other policies. What do you make of the cry from a business person who thinks the cost of money is too high and so they can't have a business that is viable in Uganda?
I think thank you, Patrick, for that question. We at URA, we are trying to do everything possible to make these businesses reduce on their costs of doing business. And the way we do it, right from when they are importing their raw materials to do their business or to put in their factories, or even when they import finished products, we make sure that there is a lot of facilitation, faster clearance, so that you get to your business and go back and import. We are trying to ease that. Right from the ports, you know, we are land linked. Right from the ports, we make sure that seamless. From the port, our officers are there to clear you, up to get to the borders, how do you get out of a clearance process and get to your business and sell and go back and bring more. Whether you're importing, whether you're exporting.
But
now, in that process, the costs are reduced.
Okay.
When you look at our system for valuation, even when you import your goods, we try to make sure that we consult you. We work with you. We look at your business model. And we look at, so when you sell your goods, what is the profit margin? When do you break even? So we never come to your business to stifle your business, to make it difficult for you to pay taxes. We make sure we tax on the profit that you make. So we do a lot of facilitation, less controls, so that the ease of doing business becomes better. And I think when you look at Kasita will tell us from when he started his business and where we are now, there is some semblance of ease of doing business. In terms of accessing capital, of course, that one is
beyond you.
It's not beyond me, but I know
but
government.
You can influence policy, can't you? Government
has capitalized most of the banks. I don't know, commercial banks. We also have some banks, access to credit. And I don't see the interest rates, depends on the CBR rates, and some commercial banks are still high, of course, but at least where you are doing heavy investment, is where UDC has been capitalized. for traders to access. I don't know whether everyone, even you, Patrick, can access, but I know there's money there where people access money. And
that's Uganda Development Bank.
Yes, Uganda Development Bank, and most microfinance institutions.
But let's be very candid here. Everyday Ugandan business person can they actually go and borrow from UDB? Maybe I should start with the Kasita chairman, because they say UDB has been capitalized by Ugandan taxpayers' money. Can everyday business person in Kampala, in Kikubo, get money at a lower rate from Uganda Development Bank?
No, but by then you cannot access that money. So when we approached the management of Uganda Development Bank, they told us point blank that traders cannot access that fund. So what we are trying to see that how do we engage them more and make more partnership to see how can we sell. We have a strategy which we are trying to sell in Kasita, the diversification strategy, so that a trader can also go into agribusiness where he can maybe access that fund or value addition, because there are some perimeters which Uganda Development Bank is fully implementing. So I think the policy has to change, because we thought that if Uganda Development Bank has some facility, it could even facilitate in business recovery. So that's where we have several issues. And then they are saying that we are supposed to benefit from another recovery fund, which is in partnership with these commercial banks. And then when you go to commercial banks, currently to get money is a tug of war.
But if you are in agriculture, there's something to do with agricultural credit financing that is being run in the banks.
It's that.
So why can't they take advantage of that for those who are in agribusiness?
That's why we, as the leaders in Kasita, we thought that in order our traders to benefit from that facility, it's better to diversify than only sitting in Kampala here on a shop. It's better to go into agribusiness for survival. So we are trying all avenues to see how can our members benefit. But a normal trader from Chikubo to access that fund is impossible.
I just want to have something to say on that.
Oh, yes, sure.
One of the reasons also why the fund is not coming through is about records, because the banks are highly formal in nature. They would want to really have as they scan through who will get the loan, they need to be sure that you at least have a trail of how you keep your records. Okay. And as it's already in our statistics with the informal sector, there are many businesses that are not formally keeping their records. And probably to speak to Kasita, like Shukubo, maybe that's why the loans are not coming through, because there is no evidence and trail that actually the person is in business.
Well, at this point, I'm not sure we know who is eligible to borrow money from UDB.
Yeah.
Do we know, Abel?
UDB is doing a lot of agricultural financing,
okay,
and industrial development, and most of the people, at least when we check the records, you see them, they have got money from there. Maybe sometimes this application, how you get access to it, could be a lengthy process, but I know every year government puts money in that bank.
That's very true.
Yeah.
But they could be putting money in Uganda Development Bank that is accessed by just a privileged few.
Maybe.
Really?
Yeah, I'm asking you, because here is a businessman saying it is hard for them to access that money.
No, I think
so.
there are
If we are
categories.
putting taxpayers' money in UDB and it's supposed to develop businesses to grow so that you can also have a bigger base from which to tax, then it looks that it's not doing its role. Though I should add, I'm not very sure about who is eligible to get that money from Uganda Development
Patrick,
Bank.
Patrick, just a moment. What we discovered when we went to Uganda Development Bank, there is one mall which was facilitated by Uganda Development. One mall. It's just on Gayaza Road. Okay. It's a very beautiful mall. So I told them, okay, now let me venture into real estate. They told me, no, Mr. Chair, now that stopped. So by then there is a lot of bureaucracy and unfair systems in Uganda.
Okay. Unfortunately, we don't have UDB here, so we're not going to hound them, because it would not be fair. If we had, is it Mr. Jangole who's still there? If Madam Jangole, if she was here, maybe it would be fair for us to ask. But for that matter, I'm going to ask my producer to bring the managing director of UDB at one point.
Mr. Kamara,
Yes.
I just wanted to add one thing. We recently had a partnership with the UDB, and one of the conditions that they look at is actually tax compliance. So to us, really, that was something that was very exciting to us, because we then had another opportunity to work with the UDB.
Widen your
widen
net.
and make sure that indeed the people who are getting these loans indeed are also compliant from the other side. So that is the other check which they introduced as UDB, where they're able to cross-check with us the information before these loans are given to taxpayers. So it is very important, really, I think, for taxpayers who would even want to have these loans from UDB to know that tax compliance is one of those components, really, which now they look at, and we are very honored, really, that it is something which they considered, and we as a URA, of course, will be able to work with them very closely to make sure that we give them the information in real time to facilitate their other processes, so that there is no delay from that side.
I've been thinking that 3 dimensions that can help grow the economy. Resource mobilization, which you do, then resource appropriation, which Parliament does, and resource utilization, which the local government or ministers do. Now, my question to you is, are you okay with the appropriation? Are you okay with the utilization as a Ugandan?
Patrick, yes, because these are processes really that go through a lot of debate. So we are, as URA, we are happy, really. I think what we are looking at is that how are these resources being used, really? I think for me that would be the question.
Yeah.
The question of accountability is very key. And the president has been very vocal on this. He has been very clear that civil servants really must be accountable for their actions. The money that is given to whether it is central government or local government, how are these resources are being used? Because then if there is a tendency of not utilizing these resources, then even we will have nothing to tax then, because where the money is supposed to go eventually will probably not get there. So that is very important. So I think once that issue of accountability is addressed as well, then we should be able to have results and better service delivery for the people of Uganda.
Abel, there was something called the Maputo Declaration, which said, for which Uganda is a signatory, to put 10% of the budget into agriculture. But unfortunately, they haven't even reached even half of that. And yet, about 70 or 60% of our people are in agriculture. Does it concern you? Do you feel sometimes like you're let down, that, you know what, maybe you should have put more money into this sector that employs more people, and maybe we can reach them and get more?
Well, thank you, Patrick. I agree with you. If 70% of your people are in agriculture, then there should be a deliberate policy to make sure they grow that segment of the economy. And where I sit and I'm looking at what happens at customs, for example, there is a lot of agricultural equipment that is imported into the country, which in my view is there could be mechanized farming down there, which was not happening before. A lot
and tax-free, right?
Yes, tax-free.
Okay.
Then there is a lot of VAT-deferred equipment, plant and machinery imported for agricultural production. When you look at the government model now of developing industrial parks, for example, and you go to those factories and you see what they are producing, most of them have that linkage with the agricultural sector, the supply from the agricultural value chain. I think government is being deliberate on developing that sector, involving the youth, involving the women, involving the
if you can hold your point there, if you
Yes.
have removed the tax on importation of agricultural inputs,
Yes.
are you also seeing an increase in a tax revenue collection from agricultural field areas?
At the moment,
Yes.
At the moment, because most of the industries and factories are on a tax holiday, we are looking at the growth in our exports.
Okay.
Agricultural produce. You used to export bananas when they were raw. Now they go as flour. You used to export maize as raw as it is.
But
now
so
for me, that's where I gauge and say, wow, there is growth in agriculture. Tea.
The presidential
coffee.
initiative in banana development, something called the PIBID,
Yes.
that is headquartered somewhere in Bushenyi, I understand has swallowed a lot of billions of money, and there is little to show that has made money for the country. But there's a lot to show that has been hemorrhaging public resources.
Really?
Yes.
At least for me, at the border, I see flour being exported, banana flour. Everything which used to go raw is now exported with value addition. And that's a sign that there is a factory, there is a machine which has added value. And that factory is employing Ugandans, unlike before. So this Ugandan who works in that factory is earning some income. And I think it is a good and deliberate strategy to grow the agricultural sector, where most of our people are. So when you look at the incentives they talked about, the exemptions that are given, the duty rates, the policies, all around, how can we grow production? How can we grow production in those sectors? And as someone who was at the border most of the time, you would only see empty trucks going through your border, not loaded. But you go there now, it's coffee, it's tea, it is whatever, value added, and they are loaded trucks going to the port of Mombasa. And that's a sign of growth in our agricultural sector. I think they are no longer even baby steps. We are beyond crawling. We are getting there.
You have teething problems.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, there's a saying that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a step. Perhaps you are taking your step. Yes. But let me come back to you, because there is the issue of local content, especially now in the oil sector. A lot of money is going to come in the oil sector. I'm asking this because if I'm told foreign companies, if they are registered in Uganda, they are considered Ugandan, right? So, and then do you tax them differently, foreign and local? Because they could be taking advantage because they've been here for 2 years. So a company comes from Portugal and it's registered as a Ugandan company. It takes advantage of the local content policy, and yet it should be paying more. If that's the case, doesn't that frustrate you?
No, good enough you have the Petroleum Authority, because we are putting these the regulators, because that concern was raised. So I know that the Petroleum Authority of Uganda was very keen, and they will scrutinize these companies to make sure that these incentives here really, you're not getting foreigners who are simply coming in to the disadvantage of the Ugandans, because local content is one of the areas really that government emphasized that we need to also see them involved in the oil and gas sector. And I would like to assure you that indeed with the work that the Petroleum Authority has done, even when you look at their suppliers database really, is that they're encouraging a lot of these local companies really to be able to be the ones to benefit. So there are parameters that they use, and they're making sure that people are not simply masquerading, because you can also have that risk now of simply somebody coming in here for 2 years and then they register, then they get these contracts and people will not benefit. But that is something which I am sure the Petroleum Authority, we've had discussions with them, and they are also in sharing information with the URA, because then you must be able to see how do we tax them. So we have an engagement, we have a memorandum of understanding with the Petroleum Authority of Uganda. We also have discussions with UNOC, we also have discussions with the Ministry of Energy in making sure that people indeed who have been designated as providing or in the business or they are local, indeed they are not taking advantage of any flow and that the country is not benefiting. And that as well, Mr. Kamara, I think even the growth in our revenue now is actually also coming in from the growth in the oil and gas sector, because you have a number of Ugandans really who have been able to be put on that database. They are contractors, some of them are subcontractors, and yes, there are tax incentives, but because of the growth in that sector, then we are seeing their pay as you earn increasing. We are seeing a lot of withholding tax coming in from directly from the oil and gas sector, and I think that is all attributed to the fact that there was that deliberate effort now in making sure that Ugandans indeed are able to benefit from the oil and gas sector.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break, and on the spot, we'll be right back.
Ocho mwami musoke njose nekusanga
ate kiki
munange anti gwamanya kunyinyonyola ebintu by'emisolo bino nembitegeera
ate kiki leero
mbadde ku dduuka nempulira nga abakyala bagamba mbu tulina okwewandiisa mu nkola ya ifris tukikolanga kituufu nnyo mbadde sikimanyi nakyo
eyo yenkola egenda okutuyamba okulwaninga bizinesi zaffe mu ngeri ya digito
etya
oba olina okuwandiisa bizinesi yo mu ifris osobola okumanya muwendo gw'ebintu by'olina mu bizinesi yo, enfulumya n'ennyingiza mu bizinesi yo. Awo URA esobola okukola omulimu gwayo ogw'emisolo obulungi
Nedda mwami musoke kye sitegeera. Ifris eyingira etya mu bizinesi yange.
Kakati enkola ne Ifris eyingiza bizinesi yo mu system ya URA. Kubanga tekyali kya buntu bulamu okugerekera omusolo ogutali mutuufu abateebereza buteebereza.
Ekyo kituufu ddala bannange, ekyo kituufu. Kubanga mazima obadde omusolo kubadde gwapaala bupaazi. Ng'ogenda n'osasula omusolo gw'otomanyiko omutwe n'amagulu. Kwegamba bambi nga tekiriiyo.
Olaba? Kakati ate n'ekirala. Ifris eyamba okukuuma ebiwandiiko bya bizinesi yo. Kuba biyinza okubulako, biyinza okukwata omuliro. Naye kati wano Ifris biba biri digitalized.
Bannange nekola ntya okwewandiisa?
Kyaku nnyo waludde dda. Okwewandiisa mu nkola ya Ifris, genda ku kibanja kya URA www.ura.go.ug. Awo olondeko e-invoicing. Awo no ugoberere endagiriro. URA tukulaakulanyize wamu Uganda.
Eyo jolese siyange eyange irisiti tompa birara irisiti ojja kumpa irisiti tompa birara irisiti ojja kumpa
tompa birala mpa irisiti yange kyekyo kakasa nti ofuna irisiti yo kubanga etiketi kw'onoowangulira ebirabo ssemalabo omuli zipikipiki laptops zifridge ne safari y'abagalana ababiri okulambulako mu Uganda ku bwereere. Irisiti yo gikuba ekifaananyi okiteeka ku URA website oba ku mobile app ofuuka obukuba namukisa gy'okoma okuteekayo irisiti ennyingi n'emikisa gye gy'okuwangula gye gikoma okweyongera. Ebisingawo bisange ku mikutu gyaffe egy'okumutimbagano.
Uganda Revenue Authority, developing Uganda together.
Walala banayivudde banzibye ezempedde. Jangu eno naawe olowooza ababbi b'oku street be banzibye. Saabo kankubuulire natikka ebintu byange okuva e China ne bangamba neetaaga tiini namba. Nze nga sigirina neetuma omuntu omulala abindeetere. Kati ngenze mu URA baŋŋambye ebintu byange tebiri mu manya gange era si byange mbu sayina tiini namba. Nze kati nebya tiini namba sibitegeera. Nfudde obusete neewola bwewole ye tiini namba byebiki bannange sente zange.
On the spot, my name is Patrick Kamara, and we're discussing about local revenue mobilization. And my guests this evening are from Uganda Revenue Authority. We also have the chairman of Kasita in the house. Now, I've heard of something called tax tribunals? Yes. Tax appeals tribunal. Yes. So what is this all about, and how does it work?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kamara. So in Uganda, we do have a tax appeals tribunal.
Yes.
So in the simple layman's language, really, that is a court. You would equate it to a court that has a specific mandate, really, of looking at tax disputes. So unlike the general courts now, this particular tribunal, their mandate is to look at the tax disputes that taxpayers who are not satisfied with the decisions of the URA indeed have a leeway, or they have a right to appeal, and the first court of appeal where they can actually file their applications is the Tax Appeals Tribunal. So these are places where we as the URA, we are always the respondents, but the taxpayers, it is one of those fundamental rights that they have within the laws. Every law that we administer.
So it's between you and the taxpayer?
Yes, every law has that provision, because then we recognize the fact that sometimes we take decisions that taxpayers are not very happy. So then they have that right to apply to the tribunal to look at that decision which the commissioner would have made. So how it works is that then once that application is filed, they will serve Uganda Revenue Authority, and then we will have to appear, just like in court, we will have to appear before the Tax Appeals Tribunal to defend the actions that would have taken. It is something that has made significant. At the start, the cases were not that many, but because of the way they're handling these matters, and at first they thought they would be biased, because this is a tribunal that is really that was set up by not URA, but by the Ministry of Finance. So taxpayers were a little bit skeptical at the start, but now they have seen the independence of the tribunal. They have seen how the cases are handled, and indeed they've been able to dispose of cases. And the other advantage that has come with the Tax Appeals Tribunal is the fact that they are able to dispose of these cases in a very expeditious manner. Okay. As opposed to the High Court, really, where these cases were being filed, where you'd have to line up with the rest of the cases.
No, Abel, a question that just come. Somebody wants to know, in fact, that manufacturers are complaining of importation of cheap goods that wipe away their margins and make their tax contribution less. Are you addressing this?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Patrick. That can only be addressed through policy. Basically, the question relates to how do you protect local manufacturers? People have invested a lot, they've put in their money, and then cheap things come from outside, and almost what they are producing here or alternatives, and they find they can't break even, they can't sell even in the Ugandan market. So usually the protection comes with tariffs. Now the highest band for if you want to import goods which are produced in Uganda is 35%. So you feel it. You know, like tires, you try to import tires, you pay 35% import
We are
duty.
trying to
Because there's someone who is producing enough for the Ugandan market and can even export. So if you want a Spanish tire,
how about
okay,
if it's coming
Italian
from the
tire,
East African community
pay
partner
35%.
states?
Wow, no, you don't pay.
Okay.
There's no import duty. But if you are getting it outside the EAC partner state, then we make sure you pay at that 35%. And it's not only in Uganda, it's also in Kenya. It's an East African rate.
Okay. You know, I was thinking of widening the tax base. There are people who have maybe money. They are into agriculture. They are into the dairy section. Somebody comes out and sells about 10 heifers in one go, and then it makes about 100 million. Somewhere in Kiruhura, somewhere in Kenjojo, somewhere in Rakai, in Zimbabwe. Do you get them to pay taxes?
Thank you, Patrick. Under the, as I earlier mentioned, and I hope you mean the inland taxes, domestic taxes, right? Yes. With our distribution and network of our offices, we have been highly encouraging that collaboration to go to the lowest level. And of course, the taxpayer may not willingly come through, but as we administer taxes, we also employ intelligence mechanisms to try to enter into that space where there is no willingness to provide the information. But also, some of those transactions, we are looking at areas like, most of those transactions in agriculture, the channels of payment, the medium of exchange, most of the taxpayers are using like mobile money, and probably they don't use the bank, but there are other platforms that are being used where we can have a source of information, and through our technology, we are trying to see also together with our federal regulators in UCC, how we can make sure that that information comes through for taxation. But also we are continuously engaging, and agriculture is an area of focus for us because that is where we expect the highest tax to GDP to come through from. So there is engagement, but also there is intelligence to determine who is doing what, such that we after getting the intelligence, we find a way of transforming it into evidence. We do not just use intelligence to raise taxes on the taxpayer, but it gives us a hint on who is doing what. Then we engage with information, and we have seen that some of them come into the net to pay the taxes. And those that refuse, we of course employ the other inspection mechanisms that we mentioned earlier.
All right. By the way, there is tax avoidance and tax evasion. So, which is illegal?
Evasion.
But you can avoid tax.
Yes.
So avoiding tax is not illegal.
Avoiding tax,
Yes.
tax planning,
You have
basically.
that? Avoiding tax is not illegal.
It's tax planning.
It's where you use
But the tax evasion is
Evasion
illegal.
is illegal.
So Consumer Chosen says, already it's more than enough, only that government misuses and mismanages it. Naturally, MPs and ministers should also be taxed on their salaries. Do you agree? They do. Okay.
They do. We are taxing them.
Okay. Somebody says leaving out tax holidays and exceptions given to investors, that shouldn't be given. That is from Ayabazibwe Darius. Saka Joseph says URA need to tax the state house because its budget is alarming. Is that a big one? By the way,
taxes, really. Yes,
They
the
do
budget,
pay-
but
pay
they
as
do
you
pay.
earn.
They pay as you earn through the employees.
Withholding tax.
But also, if there are any constructions, then we also have VAT withholding tax. So they do pay taxes,
pay.
really. They pay.
Okay, there is something called, I think, if I remember it very correctly, and I find it very confusing, but maybe you will explain it. It is called transfer pricing. We have international businesses, international conglomerates in Uganda. How do you guard against the possibility of avoiding taxes through what is known as transfer pricing, especially if they are domiciled, let's say, in Mauritius and stuff like that? Because that could be big money and they could be evading tax.
Okay, before maybe the commissioner can come in on specifically on transfer pricing and multinationals.
Yes.
The real substance is in determining the chargeable income across the countries, because how you determine the amount on which to apply tax is different in the various economies as per the laws that govern them. Then also the tax rates. In some countries, tax is on income, yet for us in Uganda, like income tax is on profit. So what URA is doing is through the exchange of information, even within our laws, we have DTAs, the double tax agreements, with like Mauritius and some of these economies, where we annually sit and engage with them to determine, to try to find a balance of what is chargeable, should be the value on which to apply tax in the other country, to try to reconcile the two. So we have the exchange of information that goes on around the different economies. We also under the economies that are under the OECD, and then also basically the base erosion of profits. So we are trying to find a balance of how we harmonize the taxable value, the value on which to apply tax. And we have an international taxation unit in large taxpayer office that is specifically in charge of handling such transactions. Okay. So I believe we are having a sight of it. It's not that it's left out, and slowly we are getting there through the agreements we are signing with the different entities that is already embedded in our policies.
Okay, I suppose that is good, but let me come back to you, Tadeusz, and earlier I had wanted you to react, because there are some business people, probably in agribusiness, you are into coffee or into tea and other things, and you feel that you're made to pay taxes, but the gentleman who is herding 200 herds of cattle probably is not into the tax bracket, and maybe he could be making much more money than yourself. I've heard those complaints. Say, you know what, we're being looked at differently, and yet the guys of cattle can in one day just sell about 20 and you make 200 million and you're out, and nobody's taxing you. They feel it is unfair. Do you hear those voices?
Yeah, by the way, we hear a lot, and it's like when I was presenting about tax incentives, I think URA should strategize to make sure that most of Ugandans can be able to pay taxes. I think it's not fair at all. If someone has invested heavily in rearing cattle and is getting profits, why can't he pay taxes? You find that even some struggling business which are making little profit can pay taxes. The same applies even to some big companies. They come here with money, they are investors. But you find you cannot believe that we have manufacturers who are tax exempted, and then just a distributor or a wholesaler is supposed to pay taxes. So I think the government should rethink about that strategy, given the fact there is a lot of tax losses which happen. And then I think we should concentrate more on non-tax incentives,
all right,
which benefit majority
Ugandans
of
are trying to
Ugandans.
engage with you, the panelists this evening. Muhara says, Abaitwabwenje says, through stopping corruption and embezzlement, quoted the misappropriation of funds, maybe you can grow the economy and the tax, you'll get more money. Yes. And then somebody, let me just speak one more. Civic education is very much important. People need to be educated on all tax regimes, how to file returns, and why they must do so. That's Mukisa Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. And Cosmo says tax more members of parliament than any Ugandan, 70% of their salaries. And Juma George says every Ugandan is capable of paying taxes, be woman or man. Every adult Ugandan should pay at least 20K to 40K. The poorest Ugandan can at least spend 2K in Waragi daily or 10K in Bivulu every weekend. We pay taxes, and please, somebody should leave us. I don't want to say who should leave us. Leaving out tax holidays and exceptions given to investors. People think that even this payee is just too much. You know, the other day I was having a conversation with a colleague in office who said this payee, pay as Johanna enjoys, is too much that it could be reduced. You know why I said Johanna. And URA need to tax the state house. I think that we already said. Create more entrepreneurs and agro processors. That's what Ugandans are selling you. And taxing MPs money, civic education, and the benefits of Obel Ndiamuhika. I didn't understand this question, this comment, submission. And let me try to look for one more. Okay. I think now, in the interest of time, I understand you have a new arrangement at the airport, right? On the arrivals and whatever. So tell us about this new arrangement.
Oh, we have, I want to tell the Ugandans that our main airport at Entebbe, there is a lot of improvements that we've come up with for passengers. If you are coming through, we want to give you a customer journey and an experience where you feel like you've landed from outside and you're moving. But our concentration is more on when you're coming, especially if you come with goods which are supposed to pay. We call it accompanied baggage. You go through the red channel.
Okay.
I don't know whether, Patrick, you always go through the red channel.
We
also have a green channel. So you can also use the green channel, and that's where you have goods which don't have to pay, and those goods should be $500 and below. So when you shop, please don't shop beyond $500. If you shop beyond $500, you come and go to the red channel and pay some money. Why we are saying it's an experience, now you pay instantly, just by mobile, Flex Pay. You just pay your taxes there using mobile money, pick your goods and your bag, you're out.
Recently, a friend of mine in Chicago sent me books to read, just to help me and read. And then she paid for, they came by air, and then I had to get them from post office. But then I just realized that they were asking me for a lot of money to pay. And I'm wondering, and it looks like it was not very clear how much you can even pay.
Oh.
And I was wondering, these books are for, must you tax them?
No, books, why should we tax them? What money were they asking you? Because books, now first of all, you need to know that they were sent to you. So they are under the courier section.
Yes.
So when they come through the courier section, the law says you can only exempt $50 and below. So if your goods are more than $50, then you pay.
So
but then the books,
their worth is about $300 or $400.
Yes, but the books are exempted in the tariff. So did they charge you import duty? Because what pays are magazines. If you come with magazines, those ones, yes, because you're going to sell them anyway. But a book for you to read, that's education. That's educational material. And so we don't tax them. Maybe yours were for sale. Did you want to sell them or just read?
Not really, but ultimately they treated me well.
Okay, thank you.
That's what they should say.
Thank you.
So Thaddeus, I want to give you this floor. Of course, the commissioners are here, but also the government is listening, and Ugandans are watching you. As a businessman, as chairman of the business people in Kampala, if you can repeat your pain and what you want really, URA and the policies that can be good for you to help you conduct business, grow your business so that they can at least get more taxes from you. What would it be?
Okay, currently we're having several complaints from our traders about withholding tax. So we appeal to the government to reverse this policy. It's killing businesses. You find that it's like you withhold 6% when the profit is not 6%. So we're having several engagement with URA to see how can they revisit this policy, and then with the Minister of Finance, we think that it's going to kill business completely. And then we appeal to URA to engage more traders, to engage the traders, because lately we had issues with some of our shoe traders from Container Village. They got assessments. Unfortunately, they were so alarming. So when we approached URA officers and we went to the traders, when we engaged, we discovered that there was some gaps which we need to bridge. And then the traders later, they were so happy after engaging URA, so that even that the assessment had to be revisited. So we think that with more engagements, it will change the perception of traders towards tax compliance. And then we appeal to the government to make sure that it totally revisits about the textile sector. Our comrades are over complaining from the textile sector because the government is saying that we are protecting local manufacturers. But the fact is, in the several engagements we have had, some local manufacturers are lying to the government that they can manufacture all types of garments, which is a lie. The fact is that some garments they cannot manufacture. And even the garments which they manufacture, some of the quality is still lacking. And even the capacity, you make an order and then you have to wait. Me personally, there is an order I made from one of the factories, and then I had to wait for 2 months. Unfortunately, even the quality which they delivered, it wasn't meeting what my needs was.
But talking about quality, Commissioner Abel, you know, nowadays, especially in the garment section, somebody will go downtown, buy a T-shirt or a shirt, wear it once, and that's it. You go and wash it, it will never be the same. In fact, the shirts and T-shirts in downtown are actually disposables. I mean, you wash it once, if you put it the second time, it will never look the same.
Oh.
One wash, and it is out of shape. And that's why I call them disposable.
Wow.
Because it will only look good once, never the second time.
Patrick, I don't know where you bought your T-shirts from, but I wanted to assure you, Patrick, that in Uganda, we have T-shirts manufactured by fine spinners.
I'm not talking about Ugandan T-shirts.
Oh, the ones that are imported.
Because you're in charge of customs, the ones that are imported. Ugandan T-shirts are exceptionally good.
Yes.
Ugandan shirts, I bought one
nice.
back in the day from Phoenix Logistics.
Yes.
It has never, for more than 15 years, it's still as good.
Thank you.
But you go and buy, you are allowing things to come in. You're allowing goods, garments to come in, and they're telling us they are new. I don't know they are from where. And they look so glittering on those shops.
Wow.
You'll put it on once, tomorrow it will be out of shape.
Well,
and I call them disposable t-shirts.
I want to assure you that at Uganda Revenue Authority, we've improved that space. We have a system called electronic single window. The electronic single window helps all intervening agencies in the importation of goods to make their contribution to that good which has been imported. So, for standards, you have Uganda National Bureau of Standards. On that platform, you have Uganda Revenue Authority. So I expect there is no product that comes onto our market which has not been certified and cleared by our standards people. So don't say we just get them out and clear them and pick taxes. So when you say it is disposable, are you trying to say that UNBS didn't do their job very well? Because I
am trying to tell you, you know, at one point, all these are government agencies.
Yes.
So you are related in some way.
Yes.
But what I'm reporting to you,
yes.
what I'm reporting to you, that when you go to downtown or wherever, when they showcase the garments, they really look wonderful.
Wow.
You buy it once and you wash it once, it will never look the same again.
That's feedback I have to take back to my team.
I was in New York a couple of days, some years back. I bought a shirt, and up to now it has never changed. And I'm wondering, why can't we as Africans also get quality stuff?
Okay.
So somebody is saying, how is URA interested in practically supporting the local businesses to build themselves a taxable base worth to actually be taxed than appearing like they are just extracting money from a struggling private sector? Patience?
Thank you so much, Mr. Kamara. Really, we are not interested in getting taxes or even strangling our businesses. What we have done under the tax education package, really, one of the things is that we will work through sectors. We want to have a sector-based approach where we are able to target different sectors. Now, for the industries or businesses which are starting, we have a different starter pack. Essentially here where we are supposed, we'll come and tell you what your obligations are. We'll try to work with you, give you financial literacy, just show you how books can be kept and things like that so that you grow. And indeed to a point where you're able to start making a profit, then there's no tax to be paid really at that moment. It is only when now you start making profits, then we look at your expenses, and then if there's something else to tax, then that is what we tax. But we are not interested in strengthening our businesses. Okay. So even as they move along now, is that even where they are not able to pay the taxes, we have certain facilities like payment in installments really, where we will listen to our taxpayers and say they are not able to pay this because of our financial difficulties. And we saw this a lot during the COVID period, Mr. Kamara, where taxpayers came up front and said we are not able to pay because we do not have the funds. So we allow them, we give them that facility where we can monitor them, they can pay in a manageable installments, but in making sure indeed we are working with them. We are not interested in suffocating taxpayers. That is never something that really we pride ourselves in. So we will work with them, we'll give them a tax education, but in making sure that indeed, that even when they come to us, we should be able to explain to them and make sure that indeed they have the incentives, they know what is supposed to be done so that they're able to comply. We are looking at making sure that compliance is easy for everybody. That is the main drive that we are looking at, having all these different payment modes. You can pay using mobile money, you can pay using a different platform, so that indeed even in your bed really you can simply come and say you can log on to our website, this information is there. Even then, we have a new contact center now, and this is something maybe I would like to talk about just briefly, that if you have any issue about taxation, because we understand there are a number of things that taxpayers do not understand about taxation, and I am glad that the feedback which is coming through, they're talking about a civic education, so you can see a need or a cry from our people that they need to hear more from us. So that contact center is another channel which they can use to call in. We have a WhatsApp line. They can easily interact with us so that we're able to guide them and work with them in making sure that compliance indeed is not a hindrance, but it is made easy.
All right, thank you, Patience. And that's what I'm going to do. I want you to make your parting shots, your last submissions. Let me begin with the Tadeusz, your concluding remark.
I want to thank you, Patrick, for this opportunity, and the team, and then URA for the engagements you're having. For sure, the engagements have yielded several good results, which have been supporting the businesses. And then I encourage the business community always to contact the URA team whenever we feel you are not contented. And then let us make sure that we make more research on our presentation so that we can present them so well. And then please, our comrades, if you have issues with URA, come to Kasita offices. We can see how we can advise you. We have several technical teams which we can assist in the presentations, and then we organize engagements. And then the good thing URA now is giving us a green light about engagements to see that how can it solve the challenges being raised by the business community. Thank you.
All right, your parting shot.
Thank you, Patrick. I would like to thank you for this engagement that we've had here and the entire team, but also to encourage our taxpayers that as we come to the end of the financial year, for those that are of 31st December, those whose financial year ends 31st December, 30th June is your filing date. So please remember to submit your income tax final return for the previous year and then the provisional tax. And also to let you know that we shall soon run a public campaign under the under the IFRIS to try to encourage the public to demand for the e-receipts and the e-invoices as they transact, because that is the only way you'll be sure that that person who has charged you the VAT will actually remit it to the government and it will be accounted for. So I really want to appreciate you for paying your taxes. You have really moved this economy to where it is, and we believe and trust that together we can take it to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Abel.
Thank you.
Your concluding remarks.
Thank you, Patrick, for having us, and thank you, our viewers, for being with us this night. I want to say at URA, we want to do more of engagement. To our taxpayers, we engage you. We want to do more of educating you. And then before we come for enforcement, because we don't want to enforce where we've not engaged you and we've not educated you. And that's the strategy we are working on. And look at us as your fellow brothers and sisters. We are just demanding what you are supposed to give to Caesar, and give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. We are humble people. We also pay taxes, and we request you also to pay taxes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patience. Your concluding remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kamara. So on behalf of myself, on behalf of the entire URA management, really would like to thank you so much sincerely for this opportunity that you've accorded to us, because we know you could have called many different people. So for us to be here on the spot, really we do not take that for granted, because you've enabled us now partly to be able to engage with our taxpayers, whom we greatly appreciate. So thank you so much to you and to the entire NTV management. But also to thank the taxpayers, really. The journey that we are walking is not a very easy one, really. But we all know that this is a civic duty. It is a noble responsibility, really, where we must be able to pay our taxes. And so far, we are doing very well with the help of the taxpayers. The taxpayers, the money we are talking about now, when you say that 25 trillion, really, this is money that our dear taxpayers, indeed, we are looking to them. So I'd like to appreciate all our taxpayers for the support, for the payments, for the filing, and that even as we come to the end of this financial year, come 30th June, let's all work together to make sure that this 25 trillion indeed is in the bank for government to be able to use on the different service platforms. We pledge as the URA to continue rolling out initiatives to engage more. Engagement is one of the things that Patrick, we are going to focus on, because we realize that we cannot walk on this journey of mobilizing revenue without working with our taxpayers. So you're going to see more of us, but we also encourage our taxpayers really to give us feedback, because we are all on a journey of our transformation. So even processes which are not working, if there are areas where you think we need to improve, we welcome that feedback. So on behalf of the URA, thank you so much, and a big thanks to the taxpayers as well.
Thank you, Patience Tumusime Rubagumia, Commissioner, Legal Services and Border Affairs. Thank you, Commissioner, Customs, Abel Kagumire. Thank you, Beatrice Muzale, Manager, IFRIS. And thank you, Tadaos Musoke Nagenda, Chairperson, Kasita. But most of all, thank you, the viewer, for the privilege of your company. You've heard from them that we have a responsibility as Ugandans to pay taxes. That's our responsibility. But also, let us pray hard that, as they collect this money from us, it is appropriated very well. And when Parliament appropriates, it is effectively utilized by whoever is having it, whoever is supposed to use that money. Because if they collect, they appropriate, and effectively utilize the money, maybe Uganda will be on a better trajectory of development. I thank you for the privilege of your company. Good night and God bless Uganda.
Uganda Revenue Authority.